Let's now go to Portland, Oregon, where police are investigating after one person was killed in a shooting overnight. Now, this happened as pro- and anti-Trump demonstrators were filling city streets. It is unclear, though, whether the shooting is actually related to those protests. Portland has been the site of unrest for many months now. And with that, let's bring in Katie Simpson right now. She is in Washington tracking the story for us. Katie, nice to see you. What more do we know about the unrest in Portland?
What we know so far is that there was a large caravan demonstration gathering just in the suburbs of Portland yesterday afternoon. Organizers say there were about 3,000 people, about 600 vehicles. Many of them had Trump flags, and this was supposed to be a demonstration to show support for President Trump in and around the Portland area, where there has been so much criticism of the president, and there have been very significant protests in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Portland, of course, has been the scene where federal agents were sent in to try and calm those protests, only really making those tensions even worse, making the scene even more raw. But in that situation yesterday, those pro-Trump supporters, they were confronted by some supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement before they even hit the road, and there were tensions that were very clear from the very beginning. As the caravan made its way through the city, it was not supposed to actually go to the downtown area where there have been those protests, but some of the pro-Trump supporters did go into the city, and when they went into the city, they were met by Black Lives Matter's activists and sympathizers and supporters, and you can see social media video of people on the street throwing things at the pro-Trump supporters, as well as people from that pro-Trump movement. They are actually firing tear gas at the supporters, and we do have one video from a New York Times reporter, and we can bring it up. And that video shows people in a pro-Trump vehicle, a truck, sitting in the back of the truck, having a paintball gun, firing paintballs at those people on the street. So there were fist fights in the street. There were clashes. And this was sort of the scene that was taking place in different spots all over downtown Portland when there was some sort of altercation and someone was shot and killed. Now it's believed that the individual who was killed, he was wearing a hat that is linked to a far-right group. It's unclear exactly what the circumstances of that shooting were. It's being investigated right now as a homicide. No arrests have been made, but it certainly, this situation devolved very quickly through the night, and those protests continued after the violence erupted.
Now, this is happening as the U.S. President, Donald Trump, is trying to essentially position himself as the candidate who can bring an end to the unrest. What's he saying about this today?
Well, Donald Trump is using what happened in Portland today as a way to really go after the Democratic leaders at the state and local level. It's something we've seen him do before. He had a flurry of tweets and retweets attacking the mayor, the local mayor there, as well as trying to make the argument that no one would be safe if Democrats win the federal election. This is what you're going to see happening in this Democrat-run city, Democrat-run state, and trying to use this as a case to bolster himself. Chad Wolf, who's the acting Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, was asked about this today and asked about whether he supports invoking the Insurrection Act to bring in military officials against U.S. citizens, given the constant unrest that they've seen in Portland. Here's what he said.
We've been asking the governor and others to send in the National Guard to address the violence so that you don't have dueling demonstrations. You don't have this violence that occurs night after night after night on the streets of Portland.
So he didn't get into the specifics about the Insurrection Act. He didn't want to get ahead of the president, he said. But again, the Trump administration is calling on the local governors, the state governor, the local mayor, to call in the National Guard, to call for help. So far, those calls have been resisted. But there have been demonstrations in other places across the U.S. today as well, or last night as well. In Washington, D.C., police used tear gas to break up protests in and around sort of near the White House, near Black Lives Matter Plaza. And there have been continued protests in different American cities, particularly protests that sort of ramped up again after the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha.
Katie, thank you for that.
Thanks.
All right, Shalom.
Hi, it's Sam Barker.
First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory, honor, and due to Yahweh, Bashim, Yahweh Shai, Bashim, Rakakadash. Double honors be to the elders, the apostles of Great Millstone, and blessings and salutations into the hopeful elect. It's the Akim Mahaloya coming back with another quick lesson through the Spirit. Lords will be edifying, updating on these riots and protests that you see happening around the world. When I say around the world, meaning around the world, okay? From pretty much every other state in America is pretty much in protest right now, from Washington, D.C. we had what they call Black Lives Plaza, which is where a bunch of simple jakes gathered with these simple Edomites to protest so-called Black Lives. When people have to understand that Black Lives is nothing but a psyop, okay, to deem you jakes radicals and violent and deemed for eradication. That's all Black Lives mean, because for one thing, if they respected your Black lives, they would be calling you the children of Israel instead of some freaking black, which we're not black. But yet Jake go down there and perpetuate that madness, and then they wonder why Esau Edom looks at them funny. Well, for the one thing, because you play right into the mindset and the tricks and the wiles of these devils. Like the scriptures say, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, we're not ignorant of his devices, okay? And this is one of Satan's ploys, Esau Edom, to pretty much get you jakes lumped up in a big ball of confusion, man, you know? So the same thing with these riots. These riots are being ultimately orchestrated to bring in martial law, because you just heard the mayor of that particular city say that, well, look, man, we thinking about activating the Insurrection Act, and the insurrection is nothing more but people that's coming together in these particular violent protests, you know, protesting government tyranny, you know, which some of these protesters can be legitimate protesters, but a lot of them are hired agents for sale, you know, I mean, not for sale, but hired agents for gun to promote an agenda, because at the end of the day, everything that's happening in these cities, Jake is going to be blamed for it, all right, even though you see mainly Edomites out there. They're the primary culprit behind what you're seeing going on. They're the ones that started the fires and, you know, exciting riots. But yet, you Jakes are going to be the ones that's going to get hit the hardest, because it's named Black Lives Matter protest. And the fact that you had a lot of Jakes that was being shot up by these cops, you know, that's another reason to say that people are retaliating due to the systematic racism, which indeed there is systematic racism, you know. But you Jakes are not smart enough to put two and two together to knowing that you're being set up for the kill, okay? Because like I said, man, these riots and protests, eventually they're going to get so out of hand to the point that they are going to declare martial law on the streets of America. It is going to be hand in hand with everything that you're seeing that's going on. And it's perfect because you got COVID-19, which is set up to hide the economic collapse, because we've been in a retail crisis for the last 3-4 years, man, you know, with thousands of stores going out of business every year. I remember doing videos back in 2016 on a retail apocalypse, and look, we're right there, you know. And actually, I still have some of those videos that saved in the cloud, you know, just in case, you know, I might think about uploading them through the spirit. But nonetheless, that's to hide the economic collapse, because you know that once food shortages become the primary norm, and then on top of that, you got food shortages, you got riots, those things are going to constitute in austerity measures, man. All right, so people are going to start really bugging the hell out, you know. So it makes a lot of sense as to why, you know, they have the military in place to do their bidding. And on top of that, they want to administer this vaccination. So what more than staging these riots and having people bug the hell out and already having a military that's in place to deliver the vaccination? So that's the Most High. He's killing 6 birds with 1 stone. But Jake, you know, you're too oblivious to see that. So therefore, a lot of hell is coming upon you and fast. Okay? So anyway, I got just a few precepts. This wasn't meant to be a long lesson at all. But this is part of the prophecy, you know, because martial law would be the norm in America. All right? This will be the norm in America. And it is going to get bad, because if you pay attention, people are really dying now from these. Well, allegedly, from what they're saying that people are actually being put to death in these particular riots and so forth. Like out there in Kenosha, I believe like 3 people got put to death, you know. 1 dude got his arm blew off, etc., you know. And it's just been just a hellstorm out there, man. You know, for those of you people out there that seems to be ignorant of what's really going on in the media, you know, all hell is breaking loose, and this is just the beginning. Like, you haven't seen anything yet. You know, you haven't seen anything yet, because eventually they're just going to get worse. You know, more riots, more fights, fist fights, people getting drugged through the streets, people just behaving like miscreants out there, you know. And hey, the prophets warned you. We told you these things will happen. But yet, you know, you scoff and bat your hand at us like we're the problem. No, we're just telling you what the problem is. And the problem is the so-called white man, all right? And you tribes, man, because you refuse to come back into the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. So therefore, this is going to be your judgment. All right. So anyway, going right into the scriptures. Give me one moment here. Let me pull over real quick. All right, so we are at 2nd Esdras. How did I get into Matthews? I'm supposed to be in the 2nd Esdras. 2nd Esdras, the 9th chapter. And like I said, this scripture has been coming out in a numerous amount of times because it's really relevant to the times that we're living in right now. All right, so this is 2nd Esdras 9, verse 1. It says, "And he answered me and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself, and when thou seest part of the signs past, which I've told thee before." All right, we're measuring the times once again by measuring the prophecies, measuring where we at in Bible prophecy. You see the troops being assembled to the streets. You see the riots. You see Esau coming down with global wrath, all right, because they have a short time. And on top of that, the COVID, which is going to be followed by real pandemics. And then you got the RFID chip. So all these things are happening in pretty much at the same time. And then World War III, all right, because the nations, they're getting ready to shoot missiles on Babylon. All right, due to this financial crisis, due to them breaking ties and putting nations in captivity, stealing from them. You know, they're not going for it. So, hey, we're in those times, brothers. And it says here, "Thou shalt understand that this is the same time wherein the highest would begin to visit a world which he made. So, therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world." Okay? So, look, I'm going to do a search on the YouTube real quick. Matter of fact, I'm going to just put in riots around the world. Riots around the world. You're going to see the type of information that's going to pop up. Right. Around the world. And guess what? You're going to have a plethora of videos. Alright. So, it says, protests and riots in the U.S. Unrest continues, worldwide chaos. Alright. They rioting over there in parts of the U.K., Germany, France, America. I mean, it's all over the place down there in Venezuela. Cars and buildings in flames in second nights of Kenosha riots. All right. Riots and protests around the world. Greece, Italy, England, and Italy. And Egypt. A revolution. All right. Even though that was 9 years ago, but still, that was still considered the end. Violent protests around the world. Okay. It says Serbia protests against the government. Coronavirus response turned violent. All right. Domestic terrorism. Trump visits sites of riots in Kenosha. Department of Justice investigate violence. You see this? They're already basically saying domestic terrorism. You see how they're trying to tie this into Jake? All right, and we said that was going to happen. They're basically labeling you a bunch of damn terrorists, man. And Black Lives Matter is nothing. Black Lives Matter is nothing but a psyop that's orchestrated to bring in basically the heat on you tribes, man. All right, and somehow they're going to try to tie this into the Hebrew Israelite thing. They haven't figured that out yet, but eventually they're going to do so. And they got this simple-minded, fat-nosed nigga getting choked out, which he was a piece of shit anyway, man. I don't feel bad for that dude. He just irks me. Just the way he looked, he just irks the hell out of me. All right, but nonetheless, man, these are the scriptures that's coming into life. Whether you're oblivious to it or not, that's your problem. But it says, "Therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then thou shalt well understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days that were before thee, even from the beginning." Because the Most High said, "I am the Most High, declaring the end from the beginning." All right, and there's none beside me, roughly paraphrasing it. So these things were foretold thousands of years ago, and they're coming to pass as we speak. Okay, so let's go to hear what Yahushua said, because Yahushua went into the same ordeal. We're going to go into the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter, which we're all familiar with. All right. So this is Matthew 24, and I'm going to start at verses 3. It says, "And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what should be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?" Okay, they call this the Mount of Olives prophecy. This is what the scripture, or the Christians, or the scholars refer to. If you go to a study Bible, a King James study Bible, and they have that section of there, say the Mount of Olives prophecy, because Yahushua directly foretold about the events that was going to proceed in his time and in the times we're living in. And Yahushua said, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many should come in my name, saying them, I am the anointed, and shall deceive many. And you should hear wars and rumors of wars." Okay, financial wars, trade wars, world wars, which is global wars, proxy wars, these particular wars, oil wars, man. These are all coming to pass. And it says, But see that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. It says, for nation shall rise against nation. We're seeing that, all right? These different world leaders are coming together to fight the Third World War. And kingdom against kingdom, that's these people. You know, you see Jake clashing with Esau, Esau clashing with Moab, and it's just going to get out of hand eventually, which they're going to have to activate the martial law or the Insurrection Act. And it says, and there should be seen famine and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places, okay? Famines, food shortages, pestilence, the bubonic plague, earthquakes in every place, you know? These are the beginning of sorrows, okay? So this is the beginning of the end, but nonetheless, it's going to come quick. You know, because the Lord he's moving. You know, the Lord is moving. He's not holding back anymore. He's not holding any punches. All right. So anyway, let me get another precept. All right. So I did a Google search before I get that precept. I did a Google search on Insurrection Act. It says the Insurrection Act of 1807 is a United States federal law code. Okay. It says amended in 2006 and 2007, meaning that they changed it. They amended it. It says that empowers the President of the United States to deploy U.S. military and federalized National Guard troops within the United States in particular circumstances. Okay? Basically martial law. In the case with their uprising against the government, they can be justified on activating the powers to be, which they would totally take over. Okay? It says in particular circumstances, such as to suppress civil disorder, insurrection, and rebellion. And this is what Esau was calling it in the news. All right, they create these scenarios, but yet when people lash out at them for their wickedness and tyranny, then all of a sudden they want to, you know, say that the people are being disorderly. Well, look at the situations that you're putting people in. You know, look at what the hell you're doing. Look at how you're treating people. Look, you're oppressing people, man. You're taxing people to death. You're killing people unjustly. The hell you think people just gonna sit back and allow that? Okay, it says demonstrators rally in London to protest against COVID-19 lockdown measures. Right. You know, they're going crazy because they know it's a bunch of BS. They know that's the same, right? You know, they know that it's a hoax. So therefore, Esau Edom, he's going to have to come down with the sword one way or another, because people ain't just going to lie over and bend over for him. It's just not going to happen. People ain't falling for the bullshit, for the BS no more. You know, they're sick and tired of it. And you got other Edomites that's tired of the garbage, but good news for them is that they're still going to get destroyed, all right? And I say that's good for them. Well, bad for them, good for us. You know, because, hey, you devils, man, whether you fight at Jake's side or not, at the end of the day, you ain't nothing but a bunch of damn demons. All right, matter of fact, before I go to second address, I'm going to go here to Revelation. Because this is our duty, this is our job, this is what we're supposed to do. All right, so this is the book of Revelation 10. And I'm going to start at verse 9. It says, and I went unto the angel and said unto him, give me the little book, which is the Bible. It says, and he said unto me, take it and eat it up, and it should make thy belly bitter, but it should be in thy mouth as sweet as honey. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. Which shows you that the prophet John is back here today. Okay? For people that say, well, Revelation was the past, brother. No, man. That proves reincarnation right there. Because when did John actually go before the sinners and the councils and prophesied? As far as we know, he died on the island of Patmos, being exiled and banished into a salt mine, which is the ultimate form of harsh slavery. All right? He didn't suffer a typical martyr like the other disciples did. Instead, he was disbanded from the land, well, and sent out there to die and work until he dropped dead. Okay? So this is the book of 2nd Esdras 15 and 17. It says here, a man should desire to go in the city. Matter of fact, nope, let's start here. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against one another with swords in their hand. And going back into these particular protests, it says global protests against racism. This is what we're seeing. Even though these things are orchestrated, at the end of the day, you're going to have people out there that's going to literally be getting put to death. And when they enact martial law or the Insurrection Act, they're going to be justified on gunning you down. When they bring strict orders for you to keep your ass in the house and you defy those orders, they're going to start killing you, man. Like what Trump said when that dude, that 17-year-old dude, when he shot them 2 people and blew one dude's arm off, and he said, well, look, pretty much good for him. He said anybody would have done it. Y'all defying government orders, you shouldn't be out there past curfew, good for you. So imagine when the real shit happens. They're not going to feel no type of way. They catch you outside in curfew, they're going to put a bullet right between your eyeballs. All right? And they're already getting in that spirit. And it says here, For there should be sedition among men, and that sedition goes into insurrection, and invading one another, and they should not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. So they're not giving a damn about what Trump is saying. He's so busy with this president election, he don't care. He's with the violence. He's the reason why it's being incited. And even though really the Rothschilds are behind it, but nonetheless, Trump is pushing that agenda. For those of you left wings out there, or those of you freedom fighters, or you constitutionalists out there that say that Trump is against the Illuminati, you out your damn mind. He's a lower level luminary, and he's fulfilling the bidding of the elite bankers. Okay? And it says here that actions stand in their own power, and a man should desire to go in a city and should not be able. Martial law. For because of that pride, the city should be troubled, the houses be destroyed, and men afraid. And the men should have no pity upon his neighbor, but should destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, and for great tribulation. All right, that's martial law. All right, the food shortages, the whole COVID thing. COVID has accelerated the economic collapse. It's accelerated the riots, the tensions, people bugging out because they don't have jobs, they don't have food to eat, and COVID did just that. It hid the economic collapse. So therefore, when the economy fully collapses, they can say, well, this is due to COVID, to get themselves out of hot water, because we know that by them over printing the dollar, which leads into hyperinflation, especially when it's not being backed silver and gold, we know that that was an accelerated decline for the Americans' economy, because GDP, the gross domestic product, is not growing at a phenomenal rate. You're losing more domestic product than you're gaining. You're only gaining 2% a year, but you're dropping 37%. That's a total bombshell. Like you got these congressmen talking about we added 2 million jobs into the economy. Where? Sure. All right, but yet unemployment is at 40 million right now, and people are losing their damn minds. But anyway, with that, all praises and glory honor that is due to Yahweh Shemi Hawashai Bashem Rakakwadash, double honors to the elders, the apostles of Great Millstone, and blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect. And with that, Shalom, Lord, so we are edified into the next lesson. Shalom and a Baba Ball.